everyone, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast and interview series, The Spirit of Success. I'm your host, Yara, and on today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Red Grammer, singer, songwriter, recording artist, and performer who is known as one of the premier entertainers for children and families. Being a Grammy nominee and Parents' Choice Award-winning artist for his CDs, DVDs, and collaborations, he has performed on stages around the world and appeared on a number of television programs. Hi, Mr. Grammer. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for being here with us today. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. So, on today's episode, we are going to be discussing careers related to music and education. But before we dive into your career more specifically, we would love to know how you got your start in music and education and performing for children.
Well, music, it just sort of emerged in my life as one of the gifts I was given and one of the things that brought me the most happiness. So from fourth grade on, that's when I started in school, joining the chorus and discovered music. Until then, I didn't really know that it was going to be a big part of my life. And from then on, I played the drums in a band and was playing guitar and started writing songs in sixth grade. And, all through elementary school and high school, it was just, my life. So then I went to college, and I was going to go as a pre-med student, only because I didn't think you could do music. How do you do music, right? But at the last minute, I switched. I was accepted to do pre-med, but then switched at the last minute and became a music major, which for me in college really meant, I did all the courses, music, composition, and history and everything, but really I was writing songs in all my spare time. That's really what I was doing.
Wow.
And then I graduated college, and then it's like, okay, now what do you do? There really isn't any real place to go to teach you how to do music. I mean, there's Berklee School of Music, which is as close to that as it gets, where they really talk about what does it mean to be a professional musician. But ultimately, you just have to figure it out, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to figure out. And I think the hardest thing is finding your voice, not your physical voice, but your artistic voice. I mean, what is it you're bringing? So there were many years of that process. And I thought I was going to be a singer for adults. That's what I grew up listening to. And then we had our first son. My late wife Kathy and I had our son David, and we started writing songs around the house for him, and they were pretty good. And so we decided to make a little cassette. That was what we had back then, and released that, and people liked it. There wasn't really a children's industry at that point. We're talking about the early 80s. And then a couple of years later, we did our album Teaching Peace, which was called by the All Music Guide one of the top 5 children's recordings of all time. So it was a really special recording, and it opened up all kinds of doors, and suddenly I was a children's artist, or a family. I like to think of it as family music, because hopefully the albums I put out are as much enjoyed by the adults as they are the kids, even though, they're really, for the kids and the family life, So that's how it started.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something for the family to know that their kids are listening to something good and that they can feel, safe with for their young kids, and also for them to enjoy and bring out their inner child. So with that, how has your career and success been a vehicle or a platform for sharing some of the teachings of the faith?
Well, as I was giving that real brief, kind of quick zoom, to how I got into the children's music, in college is where I discovered the Baha'i faith. I just transferred from Rutgers University in New Jersey to Beloit College in Wisconsin, and met the Baha'is on campus, the students, and really was so appreciative of the message of inclusiveness. Here was a faith that was really built around the idea of the commonality of humankind. And the more I looked into it, eventually I became a Baha'i. It didn't take very long. And one of the writings that Baha'u'llah wrote about music was really important to me in my life. He said, music is a ladder for the soul. And at one point he said, make it not a plaything of the ignorant. And I said, whoa, what does he mean by that? Whoa. I mean, you can see in pop music, there's certainly music that is a plaything of the ignorant, it maybe leads us to our lower self. And my experience with music, while being very visceral, I mean, as a drummer in a band, oh man, that was like, it was heaven, it was very physical and very exciting, but I also was a singer, and I learned early on the power, the spirit power of a voice. And I found there were times when even as a young singer in a band in junior high, people would be crying when I would sing, in the audience. And I said, wow, what is that? And it always was when it was something uplifting us, So they were moved to tears. It was sweet. So when I heard what Baha'u'llah said about music, that it is this vehicle by which our spirit expands, but we have to be careful with it and use it to lift our hearts. That was really important for me to hear at the beginning of my musical journey. And so throughout my writing, when I was writing when I thought I was going to be an adult performer, and then when I discovered that I had this special gift, actually Kathy and I, my late wife Kathy and I, had a real gift for writing these songs. And then it was perfect for me as a performer, because I'm actually a pretty earnest person, but I'm also silly. So it's this funny combination. That's exactly what kids are. They're silly, but they're also very earnest, So in discovering that, it really affected how we would go about writing songs. So we always wanted to make sure that our songs didn't cut anyone off. It didn't keep anybody out. They were always inclusive. So we would write lots of songs about the oneness of the human family, hopefully in ways that are interesting. One of the songs on Teaching Peace was Places in the World, and it would go, these are places in the world. Some you know, some you don't. Some you'll visit, and some you won't. Some are near, and some are far. Some sound exotic like Zanzibar, because these are places in the world. Bombay, Cape May, Mandalay, Baffin Bay, Baghdad, Leningrad, Ashgabat, Trinidad, LA, Norway, Paraguay, Monterey, Singapore, Ecuador, Bangalore, Baltimore. These are places in the world, And it never once says, humankind is one. It just has this kind of fun way of saying it without saying it, And, we've written songs about food around the world and languages around the world, always trying to find ways, because this is the work of our time, the coming together of the human race. So we've always tried to use music to forward that, to help people feel that, see it, be drawn to it. So it's really been an important part of my journey to use music to speak to the best of us and to bring out the best of us.
Yeah. And I definitely agree. Music is, as we've seen and we see in schools, when we're kids, a lot of how we learn information is through songs, and how we play with each other is through songs. And that just shows the power that music has in our hearts and in our minds. From that, and a lot of the wonderful experiences you've shared with us thus far about your career, if you had to pick one, what do you think has been one of the most impactful moments in your career thus far?
So when you say impactful, do you mean to me or to others?
Let's take it both ways. What do you
Okay.
think is the most impactful for you, and one that you think has been the most impactful for the audience?
Okay. So there have been lots of impactful moments for me. Um, and oftentimes, when you're performing on stage, you see the audience and you see how they're responding. So there are lots of situations where things happen and you see that you've opened something up for your audience. But I'm just going to go to one of my favorite experiences, musical experiences in my life. And there have been some really wonderful ones, but this one just always pops to mind. So back in 2009, and about 8 months after Kathy passed. She passed in 2009, and I was invited to the Gambia in Northwest Africa. Some friends started a program there called Starfish International. And it's a program that encourages and inspires junior high and high school girls in the Gambia to stay in school. Because in the Gambia, as in much of Africa, when girls reach their teen years, they're expected to drop out of school, and half of the culture, half of the society's potential is cut off from the education that would allow them to really blossom and share all these great qualities with the country that they live in. So Yasin Sar Fox is someone who's from the Gambia and went to Syracuse University, got her master's, and went back to the Gambia. Started this program for girls. She said, come over for 3 weeks. And she wanted me to teach these junior high and high school girls some of my songs. And she had picked 4 that she really wanted me to teach. And I suggested to her, there's one other song you might want to teach them. You might want me to teach them. It's called Listen to Your Heart. And the song is a list of all these virtues. And it's become their theme for their whole program. In fact, they're having a big gathering online, and they want me to sing it then. But I had been teaching the girls this song, and we were rehearsing because we were going to perform it for the public. And we started it, and every time we would get to the end of the song, they would just start back in.
Aww.
And we sang the song for 45 minutes. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had in my life. We started out in this building, and after about 20 minutes, we ran outside because it was just too intense and kept singing outside.
That's beautiful.
Anyway, so let me just do a little of it, okay? I'll just sing a little of it so you hear what it
Okay.
was. Truthfulness, sincerity, patience, perseverance, courtesy, integrity, compassion, and endurance, fortitude, trustworthiness, excellence, I give my best. Sharing, caring, kindness, respect, and moderation, courage, enthusiasm, determination, justice, joy, discipline, light up this world we're in. Walking through my life, I found that my very best friend is the one inside of me. There's a small voice in my heart when I stop and listen. It's there guiding me, guiding me. Anyway, and it's got a big chorus, and at the end of the song, they would just start laughing hysterically because it was so much fun and just jump back into the song. and it just went round and round and round. So that was the most amazing experience I can remember. Something impactful to others, a specific event. I think I would say, to just pick one. There was a big Baha'i conference back in 1986 when Teaching Peace was just coming out. It was just released. And they used a lot of songs from that album in the conference, and then they used a song called One Family, which is one that I had written. And it really, the music was kind of the theme music for the conference. And there were like 10,000 people there, and it affected them, and of course me too, for many years afterwards, all that music being such a part of this big experience and then being infused into communities and taken all over the world from there. So that was probably one of those. Yeah.
They're beautiful experiences. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience of winning the Parents' Choice Awards and the Grammy experience?
Sure. The Parents' Choice Awards, I guess there's probably 5 or 6 of them that we've won over the years. And it's just a real honor because they have very high standards, and they're really looking for music that, is playful and fun for kids and families, but also, are edifying, that lift people up. So those have always been great. The Grammy nomination was for Bebop Your Best, which is my album. All the songs are about character traits, and actually that song, Listen to Your Heart, the one that started with all the character, all the virtues, was from that album. And to be nominated for a Grammy is just so great because these are your peers. It's an award given by musicians to musicians. So to be nominated is just such a great thing. And we can talk a little bit I know, when we talk about success, what does it mean? We'll talk a little more about that later. The awards are a funny business, but to be nominated is a great thing. And then I was asked to sing a song on an album that was honoring Ella Jenkins, who was a long-time children's performer, many, 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 many years. And, to be included with the other artists that were chosen to be on this album, people like Pete Seeger, who's, one of my heroes, was a great honor, And so for that album to win was really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, and thank you for sharing that with us. And so you kind of touched on this when you were answering the question, as you alluded to, but we're at that kind of grand question of the show of what does success mean to you personally and in terms of your career?
Yeah. The life of an artist is kind of unusual because you're not really following anybody's script but your own. Your daily work, you decide what you're going to do. There are things in front of you that need to be done, of course, but lots of times the biggest question is what's next? What am I doing? You start out, how do I get people to even pay attention to me? So success, in other professions, success might be, okay, let's say you want to be an accountant. It's great. I have an accountant, and I really depend on them, and I'm grateful for the great work they do. For an accountant, you take courses, you pass the course, you open up a business, and at some point you say, I have a successful business. A bunch of people are coming to me, they trust me to do their taxes and to keep their accounts in order and so forth. As an artist, how do you measure success? If you are going to measure your success solely by whether you win the award or not, or by how much money you make, that's not going to work very well for most of a career in the arts. So a lot of what you have to determine what does success look like for you has to be something you feel inside. And this is not, I'm not being glib about this. This is really hard because the world says if you're not on TV all the time, or your album isn't at the top of Apple iTunes, in your category or whatever, you're going to feel like you're not successful. And even when you reach a certain level of success, there's always the next level. It's never ending. So you have to get reasonably comfortable with a different measure of success. So for me, both as a recording artist, but probably more as a performer, in-person performer, you can see what your music is doing with your audience. It's like instant feedback. And when you see that the audience is going with you somewhere that lifts them up, and you can see the light growing in the audience, starting to shine more. And one of my biggest ways of success was when a big burly dad comes up after the concert. He shakes my hand. He goes, "Mr. Grammer, I just want to thank you for what you're doing for my kids." That's like, that's heaven. And of course the kids coming up, and just being so excited and all that. But to know that the music is touching hearts, both young and old, and providing something to families that is nourishing, has to be the success, has to be the way to measure success, because there's a lot of people that aren't tuned into that. They just want to be entertained. So if you're looking for, the only way you could measure that kind of success would be if you've sold, 100 million albums or something, So I have to find my success in knowing that the music is doing what I believe that God was intending for me to be used as a vehicle to do. That is the ultimate success. There are times when it's hard to remember that. When you see, other things being hugely commercially successful that maybe don't nourish, but that has to be what you always come back to. And I, at this point in my life, I've seen enough of that kind of feedback from thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I've sold lots of CDs too, which is another way to measure. So when you get both of them, it's really great. But ultimately, it has to come down to the idea of, is it serving?
Yeah.
Is it serving people?
That is so
And
cool.
I tell kids that all the time, and I say, what is your gift? Oh, you got more than one. I say, you've got bunches of gifts in there, but you're going to bump into one or two of them that are really going to speak to you, and you're going to start working on them. And I said, if you can take what excites you like that, makes you just, and find a way to be of service to people with that, now that is happiness. That is fulfillment. That is success. And that's what I say to them. And it's absolutely true. That's how you find happiness. Otherwise, you're chasing something that will never be satisfying to you.
Yeah, that is very true. That is a great segue into this question that we'd love to know your opinion on this for youth. Why do you think it is important to combine service and one's career together, especially for this generation of youth?
Lots of reasons. as I said, it brings you a kind of happiness that is lasting and secure, because that's what service brings. And it also keeps you from being focused only on yourself, and that's dangerous in terms of spiritual growth and happiness. Um, Again, it's weird as an artist because you have to focus on yourself. You are the product. And so there's this funny balance of, how much you focus on what you're offering and how much you have to remember that you're just a vehicle for things. I think right now, in the current environment in the world, people don't trust a lot of things. And when you come from an attitude of service, it's something that over time people come to trust. So for the world, being of service is really important to give people hope and to give them a belief in the goodness of humanity. And it's something we can do. It's something we can offer, no matter what we do, whether we're a doctor or a singer or somebody who builds homes or somebody who goes into work and, codes things. This sense of being able to trust people, and that grows from people being of service, I think. So it works both ways. It's really healthy spiritually to be of service, but the world is desperately looking for those people who are truly being of service.
Yeah. Fueling that through one's career, I think, helps make it part of one's life. And showing that
Yes.
those two things go together, that it's a human virtue. At times we see it thought of as just, I'm going to go do service, and then that's separate from the rest of my life.
Right.
Like that's a one day thing. I'm going to go do a project, and I'm going to come back and then go back to whatever I was doing. But when you fuel them together and you glue them together, it's like it becomes more part of you, and it becomes more part of society as we do that more and more. And so, what advice do you have for students who would like to pursue careers in music or education, or putting them together, something similar to your own career?
Yeah. um, it's funny because, of course, I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter, but I am an educator, and not because I have a degree in education, because I don't. I have a degree in music, but mostly it's just experience. But because of the kind of music that I've created over the years, it's used a lot in schools. And so I'm asked to perform a lot in educational environments. I'm asked to keynote and do workshops at educational conferences with teachers and help them understand how music can be their best friend in the classroom. So I do a lot in the educational sphere. Advice. Well, so, we've talked about service. I think if you're going to be in education, if you're going to work with children, if it should be something you love. I was at a conference once where I said, if you don't like children, this probably isn't a good career for you. Some people get into it because, teaching, it's a kind of a steady gig, and, you take classes, you do it, and you know what you've got, and, it's a career, right? But you need to love children because they're going to come to you with lots of needs, and you need to be able to see who they are and how magnificent they are underneath whatever they're presenting to you, because they'll present all kinds of things given where they're coming from. Music, pursuing music. It's a very hard road to go. As I said before, there's not like a bunch of things you do and then you arrive. You never arrive. Of course, that's life. But I think in other professions, you can fool yourself into thinking you arrive somewhere at some point. You know, you open your doctor's office, you know, you pass the MCATs, you do this, you do that, you've arrived somewhere. Of course, in every profession, we know we're always learning, learning, learning. But in music, uh, as in any of the arts, it's a very self-generated profession. You have to really, really be driven to pursue it. Because there will be lots of times that it just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. My son Andy always says to people about, when they're talking about, what should I be doing as a beginning performer? He says, perform, 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 perform. I mean, it sounds obvious, but these days there's not that many ways for you to perform. Of course, right now it's very hard to perform live, because of COVID. But even beforehand, there aren't as many places for live performance. So you just need to do it a lot, because it's easy to sit in your bedroom on the side of your bed writing a song and singing a song. But if what you're intending to do is reach people, that isn't enough. And you might do wonderful things sitting there. You might write great songs. But ultimately, you have to share that in a way that touches people. And that is a skill that you learn from doing over and over and over again. And here's the crazy part about performance. People think that the main thing you're doing is singing. Well, that's true. But you're also thinking about how that light is like blinding you, and somebody in the 20th row in the back is getting a little weird, and the monitor level isn't right, and there's 100 pieces of information coming into you that don't really have anything to do with you singing. So you have to get so comfortable with the performing space, with being on stage, being in front of people, which in itself is an unnatural thing, all those people looking at you. And I started out kind of I was a shy kid, and you have to get over that as a performer. It's just doing it a lot. Same thing with songwriting. It's a very common thing for someone to get have a song come out and go, oh, that's pretty good. And they just sing that song for the next 5 years, Songwriting, you have to do it a lot, and you'll get some out of it. You know how many songs Andy writes for a new album? 100 songs for an album of 10 or 12 songs. I don't do that. But I do write a lot, and you have to write a lot. And you just have to view it as part of the gig. As Andy says, being a performer is like being given a free pass to the gym. You get to go in and work out day after day after day after day. That's what you do as a performer. You and a writer, you get to work out. You get to work it. And that's what the gig is. And then once in a while, things click. But a lot of the time, they don't. And you're sort of waiting for the next thing to click. So it's an interesting gig. You have to really love it. And being of service, I think, really helps, because that's another way to keep going.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And thank you for sharing all of that. It's very helpful. And I definitely resonate with the lights coming at you and the person doing something and you're like, well, why are they talking? The phone going off in the middle of a performance. It's things that you get over and then, you become accustomed with the stage and that world. But like you said, it's something that when you're driven to do it, you go ahead and do it. It's been wonderful speaking with you, Mr. Grammer. Before we end the episode for today, do you have any additional words of encouragement for our audience?
Um, yeah, do what your heart calls you to do. Um, that there's a way to there's always a way to make that into a job that works. It may take a while to figure out. It took me a long time to figure it out, but I did. And I was so grateful that I was able to figure out what I love to do and find a way to have it be of service to people. So um, pay attention to what your heart is saying to you.
That's a lovely way to end our show for today. And thank you very much for your insight and your advice today, Mr. Grammer. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and getting to learn more about your journey as an artist. Of course, everyone, be sure to check out Mr. Grammer on his socials at Red Grammer Music on Facebook and at Red Grammer on Instagram. To learn more about Mr. Grammer's works and if you would like to contact him for a show, please visit his website at https://redgrammer.com. Mr. Grammer has been hosting live weekly concerts over on his Facebook and posts them afterwards on Instagram and YouTube. He also hosts a daily series called Mornings with Red, and they are a great way to start off your day with your family. Mr. Grammer also has been working on an exciting new project, a new album, and he is excited to share that with you all. Do you like to share more about these projects with us?
Oh yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Andy and I, being both singers, we have these conversations, and he said to me a couple of years ago, he said, "Dad, what do you really want to do an album about? I mean, really, but you're afraid to do." And I said, "I really want to do an album for the planet, for nature, for preserving this incredible place we live, but I'm so afraid it's going to be dreary and scary and depressing because of global warming and everything." He said, "Well, if there's anybody who can do that album, it's you. Do it." so so I started writing poems. That was how I did it. I started writing these poems about it because I was afraid to write the songs because I was afraid they'd be too heavy. So I wrote these silly poems, and then started turning them into songs. And they're not all silly. Some of them are very, heartfelt. But it's overall a very bright album. But it's about preserving this planet and really thinking about the implications of climate change and so forth. So that's what I'm in the process of recording it. Hopefully by the end of the year it'll be out, and very excited about that.
We are looking forward to seeing it. And as you mentioned, it's a very important topic, but it's something that hopefully, like your songs are iterating, will have a bright outcome at the end of it. Be sure to check that out, everyone. And as always, thank you all for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel and SoundCloud page, both under The Spirit of Success. And follow us on Facebook at spiritof.success9 and Instagram at spiritof.success to get the latest updates about new episodes, announcements, and to be able to participate in sharing questions that you would like us to consider to talk about in upcoming episodes. Until next time, I'm your host, Yara, and don't forget to continue challenging yourself and working to make your spirit soar to new heights. Bye!